Hello and welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, Australia joins the list of nations coming together against Iranian proxy terror groups. Meantime, the coronavirus cabinet in Israel reconvening amidst a mini spike in infections. And finally, an 11-year-old Israeli finding an ancient and incredibly rare discovery in Jerusalem. To begin, Iranian proxy groups increasingly on the back foot. The United Kingdom putting Hamas on the terror blacklist over the weekend, and Australia now the latest to announce the addition of neo-Nazi group The Base and the entirety of terror group Hezbollah to its national terror group registry. This bringing Australia in line with Israel, the United States, the Arab League, and some 17 other countries who have made the same decision over the past 2 years.
Announcing my intention to list The Base and the entirety of Hezbollah as terrorist organisations under the Criminal Code. Now, listing these organisations sends a very strong message that Australia condemns the use of terrorism to achieve political, ideological or religious objectives. There is absolutely no place in Australia for violent extremism.
Israel, on the other hand, while thanking Australia for joining in the fight, taking more direct action. The UK-based Observatory for Human Rights reporting an Israeli air aggression overnight on Tuesday, injuring 6 people and killing 5. However, 2 deaths were caused by Syrian surface-to-air missiles that fell back over the city of Homs, and 5 of the injuries and 3 of the deaths reported are reportedly among Hezbollah-affiliated militants. Israel maintaining that Iranian presence along the northern border, including that of Iranian proxy groups, are a red line for national security. Now, meantime, strikes in Syria, not the only operation Israel taking against Iran. Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz detailing an interception of Iranian drones delivering explosives from Syria into the West Bank.
אני חושף בפניכם היום 2 בסיסים מרכזיים באזור צ'בהר ובאי קשם בדרום איראן, שמהם בוצעו פעולות לעבר המרחב הימי, ושבהם ממוקמים גם היום כטב"מים תוקפים מתקדמים מהסוג של שאהד.
And this with the revival of nuclear talks in Vienna just days away. IAEA authorities heading into the negotiations with calls for Iran to improve its treatment of inspectors and increase their level of access, as well as to reinstall critical monitoring cameras at various nuclear sites. Here with more details is President of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security, Professor Ephraim Inbar. Professor, thanks so much for being with us. Now, starting with the drone warfare exposed by Defense Minister Gantz, we've seen reports of Iran's drone use, including attacks from the Hormuz Islands, weapons smuggling to the West Bank and Venezuela, and even an attack on the Iraqi Prime Minister. So, and I feel like a broken record saying this, but is any of Iran's rhetoric or support for proxy terror groups or advancement of ICBMs and nuclear weapon technology likely to be factored into the new JCPOA discussions?
I doubt it, because the goal of the USA and, of course, the other European partners is to bring Iran back to the original 2015 JCPOA, which does not include any mentioning of the Iranian activities in the missile field and other technologies that could threaten the Middle East. And you mentioned UAVs, Iranian UAVs could destabilize the whole Middle East. Actually, we just published a piece on it. And tomorrow, I invite all your listeners to join us for a briefing by Uzi Rubin, one of our experts, on specifically this issue. The world decides to ignore the Iranian threat and is in a hurry to capitulate. And it seems that maybe the Iranians will do the world a favor and return to the JCPOA.
All right, so in a recent security forum at the Reichman University, Finance Minister Avigdor Lieberman alleged that Iran is 5 years away from a nuke, with or without a deal. Would you agree?
I think it's shorter. I think that there are estimates that they are within a few months of having enough fissionable material. And of course, there is another deadline. This is assembling the bomb, which is a different industrial process. And maybe there are 1 year from it. Definitely they are progressing all the time, despite the fact that there are efforts to slow them down.
So again, though, if this is the case, what is the point of the JCPOA, of the P5+1 powers, or the P4+1 powers now, excluding the United States? What is the point of letting them be jerked around by Iran?
I think the United States and the Europeans and those that are parties to JCPOA just want to kick the can down, down the road. So they don't want to take it off from the agenda in order to make business with them or to address other more pressing issues, such as China. The United States and the other parties to the JCPOA simply do not feel threatened, even by a nuclear Iran. And I don't understand why they don't have this type of threat perception, but this is a fact.
Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, for one, is pushing for more direct actions. We've talked about this already, but he's emphasizing that Israel is neither signatory to nor obliged by a nuclear agreement like the JCPOA. Let's take a listen.
בעשור האחרון, מכל חלון במדינת ישראל נשקפת איראן. בצפון מזרח, המיליציות השיעיות בסוריה, מצפון חיזבאללה, מדרום חמאס וג'יהאד איסלאמי. האיראנים כיתרו את מדינת ישראל בטילים בעודם יושבים לבטח בטהרן. המסקנה המתבקשת היא שהשיטה הזאת של לרדוף אחרי הטרוריסט התורן שמופעל על ידי כוח קוץ פשוט לא הגיונית יותר. עלינו להגיע לשולח.
To what extent do you expect heightened military action against Iran from Israel or otherwise? Do you expect anything directly against Tehran, or mostly cyber attacks, as we've seen, and preventative measures in Syria, etc.?
I think that Israel and maybe other actors, to a lesser extent, will do everything non-kinetic in order to slow the Iranian program. But if this does not succeed, Israel will have to consider serious military action against the Iranian nuclear infrastructure. I think this has been said quite explicitly by the Israeli leadership.
All right, so again, though, to what extent do you expect Israel to get help from outside, from the United States, from other countries in the West? UK Prime Minister Johnson, for example, just recently telling President Herzog this week that the world is running out of time to deal with Iran.
Yeah, but he didn't say that he's going to do anything about it. And unfortunately, it is my assessment that we are alone. On this issue, we are alone. We may have sympathy of some countries, and maybe they'll clap if our activities will be successful. But we should not expect any real help from another country to deal militarily with the Iranian nuclear threat.
All right, Professor Efraim Inbar, thank you so much for joining us.
You are welcome.